Okay, what I'm going to run you guys through today is a quick tutorial on the new Speedgrade CC. Here I have some footage that my friend Ann gave me, a short that she did, and just to show you part of what you can do with this program, I'm going to take the image from this to something more stylized and more balanced like this, and I'll show you exactly what I did. White balanced it a little different, took a little of the saturation out of his face because, as you can see, he's supposed to be a zombie. It gave a little bit more color in her face because it became a little desaturated, pardon me, with the adjustments. So let's go ahead and open this up and I'll show you what I did and what kind of control that you have in Speedgrade. Now, when you first open Speedgrade, this is obviously the splash screen that you're going to get. In this case, over here, obviously, you're going to have the projects that you worked on or are working on. And what we'll do now is go into Create New. And the first screen you're going to see is the Media tab. As you can see, you have 4 tabs up here. I've already navigated to the folder that I need, but over here on the left, you can see all the folders on your computer. Now, I've addressed this in another video, but basically, the way that Speedgrade works is they call this your desktop. Now, you can still navigate to your desktop. So in this case, I could have desktop, C, users, me, of course, and then my actual desktop. So don't get confused between the two. And what I'm going to do now is go back in to where I had that video. Okay, and once you located the folder that you want, then you choose from the video files that you have, which one you plan on working on. In this case, it's only going to be the one. So I'm going to select here, hover over it, click on the plus to add it to the timeline, which is down here. Now, as you can see, she provided me this as one complete file. And the problem with that, not that it's a problem, but the problem with grading with that is you can't necessarily take a grading layer and cover the whole entire spectrum of the movie. As you can see, there's different scenes, so it's going to require different lighting, different colors. One might be white balanced, maybe the next one's not, stuff like that. So what you have to do, and I'm going to hit P on my keyboard over here, because what that'll do is bring up these options at the bottom. In this case, what I'm going to do is go into this option over here. We're under the timeline tab, and then I clicked on Setup, and then Scene Change Detect. Now this is pretty good. What it will do is what it says. It's basically going to look at each frame by frame and then determine if there's any similarities between the two. If not, what it will do is split it up at that point. So it's going to analyze your footage, decide when the entire scene changes, and then at that point, you can either choose to put keyframes at those points or actually divide them into clips. Or what I'll end up doing in this case is dividing them into clips because it just makes it easier to work for me as far as grading. For the reasons I've said before, where you could drop almost like an adjustment layer on top of it, make the grading for that, move on to the next clip, and if there's any similarities between one clip versus another, then you can always just copy the adjustments you made on one, bring it over to the similar clip, and go from there. But it's easier to adjust instead of going frame by frame, resizing your adjustments, and then trying to make new adjustments from there. So from here, what I'll do is click on Scene Change Detect. And now I've already detected that scene previously, so what I did in this case is pulled the different footage that I had, and I'm showing you guys what it's doing right now. You just have to allow it to run its course, and that's exactly what it's going to do. It's going to detect each scene. I don't think there's going to be too much in this case because it was a pretty static shot, but at least you get to see this particular screen right here. Now, as you can see, it's one of those things where you don't have a pause button or anything like that. So in this case, you have to, depending on your machine, you just kind of have to let it run. Or if, worst case scenario, you just have to hit the abort button, start over, and go from there. Okay, so here we are. It's cut the file up into different pieces, each for each scene. So here we have one clip. It's her talking to a zombie, trying to do some speech therapy there, get him to talk normal. So what we'll do, what it starts out with, and this is how usually I work in SpeedGrade, is you have a primary layer. And what it will do is stack on, if you continue to add layers to your file, then sort of, if you're familiar with Adobe, like After Effects, anything along those lines, anything at the top will take precedence over everything else. So generally what I reserve for the top of the stack is things like sharpening and maybe some legalization, anything along those lines. But anyway, sort of getting ahead of myself here. So what I'll do in this case, and I usually leave the RGB parade open up here. And let me just expand this a little bit. Now 100 you get where the whites would clip and 0 would be the blacks. So this is where we are right now. As you can see, it's pretty heavy in the reds. So in this case, what I'm going to do is adjust the exposure. So over here we have the lift, gamma, and gain, basically. And it's not necessarily what many people may associate it with. It's not really shadows, midtones, and highlights, for the most part. The quick explanation is that lift basically sets your black point. Gamma, if you've ever seen a curve, if you're pushing it up, and then versus pushing it down, it will brighten your scene, and it will, if you bring it the other way, it will darken your scene. So it's kind of a convex versus a concave sort of curve, and I'll show you that right now, actually, just so you have a frame of reference. And as you can see, adjusting the whole scene. It's not, necessarily adjusting just the midtones. Again, the quick explanation for gain is basically how quick it gets to the white point. So you're not necessarily setting the white point with gain, but that's sort of the way that it works. And again, that's the 2-second explanation. But anyway, what I like to do first is come in here, bring down black point. Now, as you can see up here, I was able to get the red down to the bottom, and I like how the scene looks. There's really no, well, there's a couple black points, I guess, maybe in the couch, the crease right there. But from that point, I want to bring up the gamma just a little bit. And then now I'm going to bring up the gain. You can see what it's doing to the RGB parade over there. And I actually like that exposure, so let me toggle it on and off. It was like that, a little less contrast. Now it's adding more contrast back into the scene. Okay, so now instead of doing any color adjustments or hue adjustments on this, I'm going to add the new layers I was referring to before. Reason being is that if I wanted to make a change, or if I accidentally deleted a layer, a bunch of reasons, just to keep everything organized. If I was to add that to this layer and then accidentally delete this layer, then I've lost my exposure, I've lost my color. It's just nice to keep everything separate. So I'll come in here, I'll add another primary layer. And it is a little too warm for me. So what I'll do is, right here you can adjust the temperature, which is basically the white balance. I'm going to move this over towards blue to counteract that, that orange tint. And that's a little bit more of a natural look. So what I can do is come over here, I'm going to double click on this, and then I'll put, let's just put white balance. And now what I intend on doing here is a couple of things. I want to desaturate his face to make him look less human and more zombie, basically. Maybe add some more color and saturation in her face as a contrast, and just obviously to make her look more natural. And then make any adjustments from there. I can maybe add a vignette in this scene, bring attention to their faces, maybe adjust the color of this blood here. There's a lot of things that you can do. It's a very powerful program. So first things first, what I'll do is add another layer. And the first thing I'm going to try to do is increase the saturation in her face. Now with this new primary layer, I'm going to open up this side over here. We're going to go over to mask. And the reason I'm doing this is because I only want to affect her side of the frame. Now this won't really involve tracking because they don't really move too much in this scene. So I'm not going to really track this. I'm just going to place it as is. Now what I did there is the center circle moves this mask. This increases the size. If I go that way, it gets larger. I go this way, it gets smaller. This square box around the other square feathers it out. And the reason you want to feather it is because you don't want, well, in this case, it's not going to make too much of a difference because I'm just trying to isolate the subjects. But if you were trying to mask something out, you don't want a legit line. Let's say I made this background blue, just for a point of reference. And then, this was a different color. This right here, without any feathering, would be an immediate transition from this color to this color. So with the feathering, it will give you a gradual transition. That's the point behind that. These other options here, you can rotate it, and that will, let me show you right now. As you can see, these options right here, as you can see, it skews the top and bottom. And if you only wanted to isolate a certain section, let's say you just wanted to make it taller, that's what this would be. If you wanted to make it wider, that's what this would be. But anyway, let's get back into this. All right, good with that. Now, as you can see, what I'll do is come down here. Now, let's say I wanted to affect only what's in the mask. So I'm going to come back here to my adjustments with that layer selected. And let's just, for reference purposes, adjust the temperature. And you can see what I was talking about before. Now we've only affected this side of the screen. There's a gradual transition. I don't know if you can see it just based on the colors, but it's not a straight line. And this side is not touched. Okay, and I'll show you how you can revert back to what you had. This button down here, that will appear for any adjustments that you make. So even if you make a contrast adjustment down here on the wheels, you're going to get these little boxes. So in order to bring them back to center, That's the quickest way that you can do it. So actually what I'm going to do in this case, I'm actually going to get rid of that primary layer. What I'm going to do is go into a secondary layer. And this is pretty much the primary function of that secondary layer, is to isolate colors and make the adjustments. So in this case, skin tone is pretty much in the red area of the spectrum. Now you could come down here and make your adjustments, but what I'll do is just click on, these are the presets basically. So I'll click on red, and as you can see, nothing happened on the footage, but what I'll do is come up here to gray out, and you have a couple of options. So you can do color gray, and what that means is what you see. Anything that will be affected is in the color that it was in the footage. Everything else is gray. You have color black, and then you have white and black. White being the, obviously, as you can see, the stuff that you're going to change. Again, black is going to be the stuff that won't be affected. Now let's go to none. And as you saw, it's going to affect him, which is not what we want. So on this layer, what we're going to do is come back over here, grab one of our mask presets. We'll use the square. Make the adjustments I've said before. All right. And come over here. Choose the option to affect only what's in the mask. And now if we were to expand this a little, go to the gray out area, and now go to color gray, you can see that it's only affecting that side of the screen. So what we plan to do here is dial that in a little bit. We have our options here for hue, lightness, and saturation. I'm going to adjust the lightness a little bit. I'm going to grab this top here. All right, and that's pulling it out of her face, her hair, I'm sorry, and that's fine with me. Even if it does include her hair, that would be fine because I don't mind warming up her hair in this case. Go into the saturation, adjust that a little bit. And as you can see, it's sort of taking away the selection that we had. But down here, you can grab in the middle and we'll slide it along here till it matches what we need. Okay, and that looks good. So what I'm going to do now is basically the same thing with the hue until, okay, so now we're starting to lose the face. Come back, and that's starting to look a lot better. Alright, I'm not going to do too much. You have the color wheels down here to adjust the color. I mean, if you wanted to turn her face blue or purple, obviously you could. What I'm going to do in this case is just come in here to the temperature and just warm it up a little bit. And you can still see the adjustments, so let me take it out of the gray out area. You can still see the adjustments if you make the adjustments here. It's probably best that you do it on this. Use the other screen to see what you're affecting, and then go ahead and come in here and make your adjustments. And what I'll do is toggle this on and off so you can see basically what that secondary layer did. So this is with the adjustments that we made. That's off, on, and as you can see, we brought a little color in her face there. So now what I'm going to do is add another primary layer. And here's what we're going to do is desaturate his face. I'm going to grab another preset. I'll use the elliptical one. We'll bring it over his face over here. I'm going to rotate it. And then I'm going to shrink it down. I'm going to expand the feathering a little bit. And actually, I'm going to make that a little bit bigger just to include most of his face. I'm going to take this arrow to kind of squeeze the height there. Come back over here. We want to affect only what's inside in this case. Now you would be using outside for things like vignettes. You may darken the outside. So what you do is click on that, make your exposure adjustment, make it darker, and it will only affect what's outside of your selection. But anyway, what we're going to do now, I'm going to use the, let me expand this screen. I'm going to go into input saturation and lower that down. And then let me toggle that off and on. As you can see, not losing too much of that red color, which we can always come back and add more depth to that. We can do basically the same trick that we did on our skin on that blood. We can isolate the red color, increase the saturation, change the color of the blood, things along those lines. But as you can see, we took a little bit of the orange out of his face and made him more zombie-like. So let me go ahead. I'm going to go to the first frame of this. Okay, and here we are on the first frame. Now, what I'm going to do in this case is track his face. It's going to work in this case. I know there's been some discussion about Speedgrade and the way it tracks a face or movement. As in, it may have a problem keeping consistent. I mean, there's ways to work around that. But long story short, it's not going to have that much effect in this case. It's actually going to help because they're pretty stationary in their positions. I mean, he has a little bit of movement, but it's not as if he turns his face to look at the camera or he stands up or anything along those lines. So anyway, with the mask that I have here, I'm going to come down here, click on Track Object. And as you can see, Speedgrade starts to do its thing. So you just have to let it run. And this is another good thing of taking this clip and then splitting it into its individual clips. What it will do now is stop when it gets to the end of the scene, which is great because you don't have to abort the process or kind of tell where Speedgrade to look in order to do the mask tracking. Okay, so it completed its work. I'm going to come up to the timeline, and what I'm going to do is I have a Windows machine, so I'm going to hold the Alt button and my scroll mouse. You can see what it did there. All right, we're just going to isolate this part of the timeline. What the previous screen showed, as I'm sure you could tell, is all the clips. Very condensed, kind of small. Can't see clip for clip. Now I can see the clip isolated over here. So now we're going back to the footage. Okay, and now you can see what it did. It's basically tracked his face. And again, nothing too impressive here. There wasn't too much movement. I just wanted to make sure any movement that was included, the desaturation and any color adjustments I made stayed with him. Okay, and here we are in another scene. The thing I like about Speedgrade is, and I know there are ways to do this in Premiere, among other programs, but you can have all these adjustments. As you can see down here, you have overall for the whole entire scene, and then you have your shadows, midtones, and highlights. So you can make these color adjustments and lift, gamma, gain adjustments, among other options, individually. So as they promote, you really have 12 things to adjust, 12 adjustments, because you have the 4 up here and then the 3 options down here. But what I'll do is show you now how you can isolate those and adjust those accordingly. So we have our primary layer, and I'm going to do what I did before. I'm going to bring down my black point. And in this case, I'm going to come up right to the gain and get it so that it's almost touching the top there. Because we do have that white light in the back there, so I'm going to try to touch to the top. I don't mind if that clips because that's a natural look for the light. And as far as the gamma, I'm going to bring the gamma down a little bit, I think, in this case. Only because I like the contrast. And then what I'll do is a little bit of the input saturation I'm going to take out of there. Okay, so that's going to be our primary adjustment. So what I'll do now is add another layer. I'm going to double click on that. What we'll do is call this midtones. Okay, and with that one selected, we're going to come to our midtones. And as you can see, we have that gray out option again. So I'm going to come here, go to color gray, and there you go. That's your midtones. That's everything that you're going to be adjusting. You can white balance that, as I said. I mean, you can decrease the saturation within the midtones. We can come over here to the highlights, and now you're only going to see the lamp and any of the highlights. And just for the heck of it, there's your shadows. Anything in color. And again, you have the other options there too. If you prefer everything else to be black, or if you want only the area you're affecting to be white, then you have the white and black. And then I have a couple more quick tips for you down here. Besides the primary and secondary layers that you have, that you're stacking on top of one another, you have this option right here, which brings in all sorts of other options. You can have the legalized NTSC, which I mentioned before. So if anything comes out of the range of 100 or 0, you can throw that on there. Now, obviously, other countries would be using this, and certain countries would be using this, all depending on your broadcast system. So you'd be able to know that. But that's a good thing to add on top. There's also the option here of sharpen. And as you can see, you really only have this one option. And this brings me to something else I wanted to explain, is that what you can do is either left click and drag. If you wanted it to go quicker on a Windows computer, you could hold down Shift and left click, and then it would speed up the process. As you can see, if I don't do that, it's going to move along at a steady enough pace. I can click on Shift and it would speed it up right across this. As you can, yeah, there you go. All right. But the other option that you have is to right click on that arrow. Now you can let go of your mouse and just drag it over. Left click to set it, and you're all set. Under this tab, you can see the adjustments that you made, and it's pretty responsive. I don't have the best machine, but as you can see, this three-way color wheel, I guess, this three-circle button, what you can do is toggle the grading on and off. And what I'll do is take that off, put it back on. And as you can see, even on my machine, it's pretty quick to update the display. However, if you just wanted to see each individual layer, you have this eye that you can just toggle on and off. You won't see much in this case with the sharpening, at least probably not through the screen capture, but obviously what I was doing before with the secondary adjustments, you just toggle the eye on and off. And if you ever just give up on adjustments that you made, or you need to start over here you have the reset options, which is a great feature. Okay, and down at the bottom here, what I did was set up some looks. What you can do is take all the adjustments you made over here in the Layers tab and save it to a look. That way you're not sort of recreating the wheel, so to speak. And I've already done that. So let me go ahead and expand this. As you can see, I already had one from before. And then I have these two that I created. And the reason I did that is because I have a lot of duplicate scenes. There's a lot of scenes where she's speaking to him, and then a couple scenes where he, of course, is speaking back to her or trying to speak. So all I'll have to do, now let me see if I can locate one here. Now, as you can see, it has that orange color cast. I'm going to come down here, double click on that, and it's applied the adjustments that I've made. And you can see all the adjustments over here. I applied a secondary for her face, added the orange back in, midtone adjust, blue adjust to take out that orange overcast color. So all you would have to do is come down here and click on Save Look. What it will do in that case is put one of these boxes that you see over here. It will give it some generic name, Untitled, something along those lines. Do as we have over here, double click at the bottom, and then rename it to whatever you want to call it. And you can use it on any of your footage. Now, the thing you have to keep in mind with this is you can actually use this obviously on other footage, such as videos that you've shot, but you still have to make some adjustments from there. The slightest of change in lighting, things along those lines, you still have to make the adjustments needed, but at least we'll give you a base to go by. Now, these looks can be applied to other footage, but it would have to be something similar. Maybe in the composition and what's in the scene, but not necessarily, but more along the lines of the exposure and the color. You don't necessarily want to throw this on maybe a nature scene because it's going to throw all the colors off in different directions, and it might be overexposed as it is, and now you're going to adjust the exposure. So as long as you have something similar, you can throw this on the footage. But what I love this feature for is the purpose that I used it in this case, is that there were many scenes that repeated themselves, and I didn't want to, necessarily cut and paste and copy everything over or start from scratch. They were similar enough where I could just create a look, take it, go to the next scene, and then apply the adjustments on top of that one. Again, I'm working on a Windows machine, so if I wanted to go to the next clip in this case, what I'll do is hold Control, Shift, and then right arrow, and that will bring me right over to the next clip. If I wanted to go the opposite direction, same thing pretty much. You would hold Control, Shift, and then left arrow to get back to the beginning of the previous clip, and then make the adjustments from there. Now, one more thing before we render. Right now, the whole scene is selected. The whole clip, I should say. The entire movie is what we would render out in this case. If you only wanted to render out a portion, what you could do is highlight a clip like this. As you can see, the tool that demonstrates where on the timeline that you are is already there. But I want to only render out this particular portion of the clip. So what I'll do is double click on there. Let me move my wheel. And as you can see, these two blue bars here, that's the only selection. Now what we can do now is go into the Render tab, and we can still see the entire timeline, but what it will render out is only what's in between those two markers right there. And as far as the Output tab, it's pretty much self-explanatory. The folder that you want to export to, the name you want to set it to. Now keep in mind that it keeps it from last time, so what you want to do is make sure you definitely adjust this, otherwise you may be overwriting files that you already have on your computer. Format and options, you can have presets. Now I have a couple presets that I made and a couple that came with Speedgrade, but you can always come in here, go to Other, and here's where you can set all your options. I have the QuickTime tab selected, and I have the DNx HD codec selected. Obviously, you don't have to choose this. You can go down to H.264, whichever option you prefer. Go ahead and make the adjustments here. Enable audio if you want. Put a name for the preset and save. So I'm going to cancel out of this. What I've personally noticed is that automatic color calibration should be checked in this case, and if someone knows otherwise, they can let me know. The reason I say that is because I haven't had that checked in the past, and the output didn't appear the same, at least on my machine, as the preview screen. So it came out, the gamma was a little bit off. It looked strange to me no matter which player I used. So leave automatic color calibration on. The framing, you can adjust that accordingly. Online quality is if you were sending this out basically to a client. If you had this it's going to be a larger file. It's going to preserve more of everything. Offline, basically that's for your reference. If you're just trying to do a test, maybe if you're just uploading it to YouTube, something like that. And then you go ahead and render it out. Not too much with the results tab. It will basically show you the folder that you've rendered the file out to. So you can always check back here. But I just wanted to give you a quick run through of how to use SpeedGrade. I know I didn't address everything. There's keyframes that you can adjust if you wanted to manually adjust the mask. The playhead, there's, if you needed to get rid of a clip, there's this button right here. I do plan on doing a part 2, but this is sort of the quick run through because it is a pretty extensive program. So I apologize I didn't get to everything, but this should get you up and running. And if you have any more questions, let me know, and I'll try my best to answer them. I'll check the comments and we'll go from there. But I hope this helped a lot of people. I know that this is relatively new to a lot of people, including myself, to be fair. But I feel as if I have a pretty good grasp on this, and I hope that it came across so that you'll be able to get a handle on it. And hopefully you can start grading your footage in SpeedGrade, because personally, I think it's a great program. Nothing, to take away from Resolve or other programs, but especially with the integration with Premiere, I really like this program. As always, thanks for watching. Thank you for your time. Please subscribe, and I'll see you guys soon.